Welcome to Crossroads on TVI. I'm your host, Manjula Salvaraja. Today on our show, we talk about New Year resolutions. Do you make them? Do you keep them? Is it a wonderful way to envision your year and set goals, or a completely futile exercise? We have an exciting panel of guests here in the studio to share their opinions and experiences. Our first guest, however, joins us by phone from the West Coast. Philip McKernan is the president of Philip McKernan Inc., an international motivational speaker, a leadership coach who has worked with Canada's Olympic team prior to the London Olympics, and a best-selling author of South of 49 and Firesale. He's also a regular on national television, including CBC, Global, and BNN. Thank you for being here, Philip.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, perhaps I have a story about the first time that I hear you speak that I'm going to actually share with the panelists after, and we'll have a good laugh about it. It was definitely what taught me to write my goals on paper. But, I wanted to get you started on hearing your thoughts about this yearly exercise we go through of making New Year resolutions. What do you make of it?
Well, maybe since you and I have last met in person, I've probably shifted gears in this whole regard for various reasons, based on my own personal journey and the journey of the people that I come in contact with through the work I do. I think the first thing that comes to mind is why yearly? Why is it January? Why do we just wait till January for, to look and reflect upon our lives? And I think, I think that to me is somewhat of a kind of something that doesn't necessarily serve us. And I think often the challenge with goals is it pulls us into the future. Goals are things that we want to attain, and therefore they're things that we're writing down, thinking about, talking about, that actually we want in the future. And what it does is it pulls us into the future and makes it very challenging for human beings to be present daily in their lives, whether it's around their children, around their family, around their work, and even just around themselves.
Interesting. So, why do you think it is that apparently critics or research says that 75% of people who make resolutions break them? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think sometimes you could argue that the resolutions they make are insurmountable, are very significant, and they're like climbing a Mount Everest. And what happens is, if I brought, the human mentality today is we just want so much, but we don't want it tomorrow, we don't want the next day, we want it yesterday. Not even today, we want it yesterday. We're so impatient. And if I put a busload of people and I brought them down to a valley, and I looked up and I said, okay, there's a small little hill, there's a larger hill, and there's a huge mountain. Which one do you want to climb? They may not want to put the work in, but they all want to be on top of the big mountain. But what happens is, if you walk up a small hill, two things happen. Number one is, if you're lucky enough, if you're clever enough, wise enough to look back at the climb or the journey, you go, well, look what I've done. And two is, when you're on the top of that hill and you look at the big one, let's just say it's the Mount Everest, it looks more attainable. And I think, the challenge is that people set these really lofty goals. The biggest challenge, however, is not the loftiness of the goals. The biggest challenge is the unauthenticity of the goals that people set. They set what they think they want. They set what they think their parents want for them. They set what society wants from them. They really set thinking that this will make them happy. And what you have is, you have people who attain goals and are still missing something in their lives, and people who basically give up upon the thing because they realize it's not what they want in the first place.
Interesting. Now, I know that, coming back to your first point that you made, that, it is strange that people pick January as a time to reflect. However, the language everywhere is, New Year resolutions, or think about your year, and business and so many other things operate on treating January to December as a calendar year. When people ask you, they always ask you, well, how is this year going as opposed to last year? So given that you think New Year resolutions are somewhat of a strange thing to be doing, what else do you think people ought to be doing to launch their year? Like, what would you recommend the exercises that people go through as they start off the year?
Well, I think that the first thing we do is we look at the future, but I think what we miss is we miss a beautiful opportunity by reflecting on the past. I have a saying that the past has created the present, who we are today. Everything we've been through, everything we've gone through, every person we've met, every business decision, good, bad, or indifferent, has made us who we are today, and therefore dictating who we are going to be in the future. And I think the past is completely underrated. I think if we look back, not just over the past year, but prior to that, and we look back over the life that we're living, the people that we're hanging out with, we reflect back. Let's just keep it simple. Over the last 12 months, and we look at the work that we're doing, are we satisfied in the work that we're doing? Are we satisfied with the people people that we're hanging out with? Are we satisfied in our own skin, which is the most fundamental question of all? And when we start to look at that, what it does is it builds our awareness and it brings a truth to the table. Because what goals do is they bring us again into the future, but it also supports people to stay busy. Busy people are running or moving from something. And when you set a lot of goals, and I see people setting goals in 7 or 8 or 10 areas now, just so I don't want to come across as knocking those people, I was one of those. And I thought what I was doing made sense. And what it did was it created so much complexity in my life that actually it brought me away from the very things that I want. In fact, I just was going through some old files and I found a goal-setting sheet from 7 years ago. And I can tell you right now, I am so thankful I didn't achieve half of those things, because if I did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And I'm more fulfilled now doing what I do today than I ever have been in many, many previous, years of my life.
So, you know what, I'm putting you on the spot here. I'd love to hear about one of the moments that has been a highlight for you. I'm going to, by the way, to our panelists, I'm going to be asking you the same question soon. But, is there a moment that you think of back in 2013, be it business or personal, that was a highlight for you as you reflected at the end of the year?
Absolutely, and if I may just backtrack, the origin of this, and our lives leave clues, and every human being that comes to me, many of the people that work with me come to me and say, I need clarity about an aspect of my life. The reality is, and it's a poor business model for me, because I say to them, I look them in the eyes, say, you already have the clarity that you seek. You know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. You just don't believe you're good enough to deserve it, that you know what it is, etc. And when you look back in your life and you reflect over your life, life leaves clues about what your core passion, what meaning means to you. And when I was in Sri Lanka, about 12 years ago, I can't remember the exact date, but it was about 12 years ago approximately. You may be able to correct me on this. It was exactly 1 year after the tsunami, and I remember being struck by the devastation of the country. And I remember staying in this 5-star hotel, and on Christmas morning, I was just compelled to leave that building. And I said to my wife, I've got to leave here. I don't know what's driving me. I just have to leave this building. We ended up leaving. We ended up booking into a very modest little B&B place. And I met this woman who ran a charity. And long story short, the following day, rather than mourn and mope around and so on and so forth, we actually spent the day in an orphanage. Now, I would be lying to you to say that struck a chord, and I said one day I envisage a system or a process where I'm going to do the same thing. I'd be misleading you, and I'd be lying. But what it did was it burned a kind of an imprint in my soul. And in the last 12 months, I launched a concept called Give and Grow, where we bring a small group of people to a foreign country. In this case, we went to Guatemala. The idea being we give unconditionally of ourselves and we grow exponentially as a human being individually. So one of the highlights for me in the last 12 months was actually bringing a small group of people from all over Canada to Guatemala to work with orphans. There wasn't maybe a moment in the week, it was a whole week. And funnily enough, that was inspired 100% by my experience in Sri Lanka approximately 12 years ago. But if I didn't take the time to stop and reflect back over the previous experiences of my life, I wouldn't have found that opportunity, if that makes any sense.
That's a great story. Thank you, Philip, for joining us. Good luck in 2014, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we ought to meet our panel. I am going to share the story about Philip because I think it's very interesting. I heard him speak. I was at an event. He gave a motivational speech, and he asked us to write our goals for the next 6 months on a piece of paper. So I wrote down my goals. He said, keep it to 3. So I wrote down these goals, and I wrote down one goal, which I thought I shouldn't write this down because I will be so disappointed. It's a personal note. My husband and I had been trying for a while to have kids, and we hadn't had much luck. And I actually wrote down, have a baby. And I put it in the envelope, and he said, well, we were going to mail it to you. So his staff mailed it to us. And I thought, I can't believe I've done this. This letter is going to come to me. I'm not going to be pregnant, and completely disappointed. I forgot about the letter. Something like 2 months later or something, I got pregnant. A couple of months later, I get this letter with my 3 goals. And I heard him speak for a second time a year or 2 later, and I told him the story, and that's how we reconnected. But I'm not going to tell you, therefore, I don't want to be misleading and tell people if they're having any issues with fertility to write down on a piece of paper and mail it to yourself. What I'm saying is there's something magical in writing your goals on a piece of paper. I don't know what it is, but ever since then, I've been doing it, and it hasn't worked it has worked decently well for me. Anyway, I had to share that story. So let's get on with meeting our panel. This is a very ambitious panel, and I'm so glad they could take the time to be here. Our first guest is Thaves Ponnampalam. He's an entrepreneur who launched his business Menyou last year. Menyou is a leading edge technology solution that focuses on mobile solutions for the hospitality industry. This is interesting. Apparently you were in the corporate world for 7 years prior to this, thought you would retire in the job that you were in, and then, okay, we're going to hear more about this. But he's jumped into entrepreneurship, very impressive. He holds a degree in computer science from the University of Toronto. Kiru Srikanth, who will be familiar to some people on TVI because she's been on TVI before, is an aspiring child therapist with a degree in psychology. About a year ago, she started video blogging her opinions and advice on a variety of topics. With anywhere from 200 to 2,000 views for some of her pieces, she plans to spend more of her spare time when she's not volunteering and emceeing and a million other things I know she does. She's going to spend more of the spare time in 2014 growing her fan base. Siva Heron is a 5-time international award winner in photography, and get this, rated by Fearless Photographers as Ontario's #1 photographer. I'm sure he's a familiar face to many who have had the privilege of being photographed by him because he makes people look good. Siva has a popular and thriving wedding photography business. He has been an expert in the industry for over 3 years after leaving a consulting career in telecom, a lot of leaving here, to follow his passion. Thank you for being here. So you know what, let me get you started on this. What do you make of New Year resolutions? Let's get right into the fire. Siva, what do you make of this exercise of making New Year resolutions?
I think it's a great idea. Just like any great idea, it's just a great idea. You have to put work into it before it becomes any sort of a thing that you can call a resolution or a result from it. So I think the name New Year resolution itself is misleading, because it gives you that instant gratification of, oh, I just made 6 New Year resolutions and I feel great. You could write, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. That's on my New Year's resolution. You almost, right away, you feel like, yeah, it's on my list, so therefore it's good to go, it's ready. So I think, personally, it's very misleading. It shouldn't be called New Year's resolutions. It should have a different name. Didn't think about it yet. Maybe we can come up with something better. But I think that's one of the reasons why it leaves you to believe that once you write it down, it's going to work out perfectly fine for you. And that's probably why we keep doing it again and again and again. That word resolution just markets itself so perfectly. You're like, yes, resolutions. Let's write it down. And it's going to erase all of 2013, and 14 is a fresh start.
Where I would have lost 25 pounds.
Yeah, and you just feel good about it. So I think as far as I'm concerned, it's a feel-good activity, and we love doing it because it just makes us feel good, like giving out Christmas cards.
Okay, so we've got one person. Okay. Kiru, where do you stand on this?
I completely agree with Siva. Resolutions are a joke, absolutely. There should be something that you do every single day, not just the beginning of the year or beginning of the month. I don't understand when people say, okay, I'm going to start on Monday, or I'm going to start at this time. Just do it. If you want to do something, just do it. It shouldn't be the very first day of the year.
Actually, yeah. I mean, for me, if you asked me the same question, I say 5 years ago, I would have actually had a different perception. But I think it goes to say that resolution is a great. It's like it becomes almost like a marketing thing for us. I think the way I see it is, for example, I relate to very much with what Phil said. Instead of just writing down things what you want to do, just reflect back on the past itself, especially the last year. I personally do that myself because I want to more like importantly learn from the mistakes I've made, so that you don't end up doing the same mistake in the next year coming ahead, right? That's what's really, I think, makes a big difference in New Year's resolutions. To look back of, not even just first year, but last year and the year before, and just sort of concentrate on, okay, what can you do better, or what can you not do the same mistakes, right? For example, it really makes a difference between setting a goal and not meeting it, and it's a great satisfaction to have, but it becomes very unrealistic if you don't sort of put a commitment to it, obviously. And when I say commitment, losing weight is obviously number one thing. but not having the commitment weekly basis, like not having a metrics to measure it, it becomes a false advertisement, in my opinion. So I think having to reflect on what you did in the past makes a big difference on committing to something that you want to sort of achieve in the next year coming up. So
now, people in your network, whether it's be viewers, people that you do business with, or your clients, I mean, or friends, do you think there's a culture of making resolutions in the networks that you know?
I just noticed the word commitment should be used. New Year commitment would.
Okay, we have a word. Okay, we have a first draft. We should have a board here.
Yeah, thank you.
New Year commitment. That actually, we could change it. It started here. We're gonna get the patent people working.
It's gonna be a thing. If you call it New Year commitments, I think less and less people fall off of it.
It's actually more scary when you say that.
Yeah, because it explains exactly what you're going to do. Now, back to the question: why people.
Like people in your network, do people in your networks make resolutions? Is this a big thing?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone I speak to have their New Year's list, and if you just go through your Facebook feeds, you'll see everyone's, okay, these are my lists, this is what I'm going to do. It's great because they're doing the first step of any commitment. They're actually publishing it and showing it to their friends so they remain accountable to it. But I do notice, they're actually doing it. It's a trend. It's like, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But and I agree with you guys that reflection should be
a bigger part of the process. Now, do you hear from your viewers? Do they talk about making New Year resolutions?
It's just a norm.
Because you have younger viewers,
yes,
right?
Yes, yeah. It is a norm. People just say, "Oh, I want a resolution because my friend has a resolution. I don't want to look like a loser," so they all create a resolution for themselves. But no one really keeps up with it. It's just like I give it 2 weeks tops, and then everyone gives up.
See, that apparently is it. It's something like they have a day. It's apparently day 20.
Okay.
Right? That's when it happens. Yeah. Now, what about, I'm curious, like your co-founders, your business partners, is this a trend with them?
I think personally, technology has a lot to do with the fact that, why people are more into setting New Year's resolution. For example, technology evolves into people, like letting people know more about themselves instead of just, back in the days, you'll set a New Year's resolution for yourself. Even now you almost like next day the whole world knows about it.
A minute after you make it,
right?
Yeah.
It really becomes, technology becomes part of you, and unfortunately, it could actually be a somewhat benefit to you in some ways, just because other people know about it. You become sort of accountable for it, and that makes a big difference versus not achieving versus achieving, right? So I think personally, a couple of my friends they do have it, but they know enough to say not to set a I guess ambiguous statement. Instead, they set milestones. You know what I mean? Instead of a New Year's resolution, okay, by mid of next year, I want to reach at this level. It's something they can control, obviously, and measure. Measuring is a big part of New Year's resolution. I mean, it's nice to set a New Year's resolution, but you have to have some sort of metrics to measure it. Without having to sort of say, I've met this goal at this time, you can't really evaluate yourself.
It just becomes pointless.
It becomes pointless.
So I may as well ask, have any of you made New Year resolutions, or whatever name you call them by?
Yeah.
So, Siva, have you made New Year resolution?
Yes.
Yes.
So.
Yes, in the past.
No, not
this year?
No.
Actually, not this year. No.
Not this year. Do you call these things by other names? Is that what it is?
I call it goals. Yes.
Goals. So you have made goals.
Goals.
So, are there any that you can share? I'm curious. Okay, you don't have to share. Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Unless you want to.
I can share. One of my New Year's resolution or goals is to spend more time with friends and family. I think in my field, it's really hard to get any weekends or time off that I can actually say and go and spend quality time with my friends. So every year they're like, oh yeah, I've invited you to my birthday, and there you are shooting a wedding, or you're doing this, you're doing that. Oh, okay, you're at a meeting.
And your business is booming, so it would actually be saying no to
saying no to others and things that I value as quality time with friends and family. So I am trying to make a conscious effort to do that this year.
Okay, so what are you going to change about your behavior to do that, though?
See, that's the thing. I've done the first cardinal mistake of making a goal. I've simply said, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, and haven't really thought it through in terms of all the little steps. I find when you break down a goal into what they call a SMART goal, we used to learn that in school, specific,
Is it metrics?
Measurable. Attainable, result-oriented, and target date, or I forgot exactly what it is, but you can Google SMART goals and find out more about it. But I think first step of any goal is to make it SMART and then move forward. I haven't done that yet. I've simply wrote down a list. So the way I work is I write down lofty goals, and then I start to make sure, check this, go to the next step of SMART goals. And like you said, keep a report card, right? So that
so there's an idea of progress.
Yeah. I'm a very visual person, and I'm a very macro thinker, so I do need a long-term goal. I do need a 10-year goal for myself. Now, the thing about it is it's not set in stone. You can move with it. You can always go back. Like Phil said, if he had gone and, had become what he had wrote down 7 years ago, he would have been not happy. But I think it's organic. You have to go back to it.
But you still have to have a place to run to. I'm going to hold you there for 1 second. We're going to take a break. That went by at the speed of light, that segment, because you guys are so interesting. We're going to take a break. Stay with us. You're watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI. We're speaking about setting New Year resolutions. Is it a great goal-setting exercise or a complete waste of time? In our studio, we have Thaves Ponnampalam, Kiru Srikanth, and Siva Heron. And before I go to the panel, I just wanted to mention, this is an article where I found Time Magazine's top 10 commonly broken New Year resolutions. Lose weight and get fit is number 1. Quit smoking, learn something new, eat healthier, get out of debt, spend more time with family, travel to new places, be less stressed, volunteer, and at a paltry number 10, drink less. Anyways, so coming back to you, so what you were saying is that you have this goal, but you still haven't figured out your system and your report card for it.
Right. So I think I do this so often that it has become part of my life, keeping a journal as well as having this system all around me that gives me a check and balances of what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and what are my opportunities, and also what I'm doing well. So by keeping that in mind, it's an ongoing process, and it doesn't just happen on December 31st or 1st of January. It kind of happens every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, for the whole year. Okay. So what I do is I'll take a lofty goal, put it into this blender of a system, and then out comes a checklist of things that I need to do. Now, the disadvantage of this is that, like any system, it will pop out things for me to do. It's up to me to find the right time to do it, or at least the time to do it. So as a person who's an entrepreneur now, my biggest asset or my biggest thing that I can lose is time. And managing that. And that I find is the most challenging, especially when you set goals and you end up with these lists and things to do.
Yeah, but you know what? In a way, I think that's the interesting part, is that a goal sounds so romantic and great. Tasks don't.
No.
But really, that's what gets you to the end, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about one of your goals, because you shared it. I mean, not resolution. We're not going to use the word resolution. Goals was
your commitments.
Yes, commitments was working on your video blog, right?
For
so
sure.
Now, talk to us about that. Like, how do you go about? What's your exercise for setting goals for the year?
So for this year, I want to reach 500 subscribers. So since I've only started recently, it's only at 380 right now. So I want to reach 500 by the time my 1 year comes along, which is January 13th. So please subscribe. So what I'm going to do is I've created myself a thermometer. So I want to see like how many I've been reaching, what kind of videos are actually getting me more views and more subscribers, and the genre, is it themes of the videos, so make more of those videos. So I have an action plan for myself, and I really think it's important to create yourself punishments and rewards. Coming from a psychology background, this really helps you to change your behavior.
I so believe in incentives.
Yes, exactly. So if you say you're creating I'm creating a video which gave me like 5 views, then I'll reward myself with something. Or if I'm losing subscribers, then I punish myself or something. But not like punish like a really bad punishment or anything, but but maybe not the video itself, but other goals it would work. Like say if you want to lose weight and you haven't been really, haven't had any luck of it, then you stop eating ice cream for a month, because you didn't lose that target weight. Definitely don't have like a long-term thing. Say like, in a week I want to do this much, and next week I want to do this much, and like shorten your goals a little bit instead of having, for the whole year I want to lose this much weight. Have yourself time limits. So that's what I'm trying to do. So hopefully that works out.
Okay, help her meet her goal, folks. Okay. So Thaves, let's come to you. So last year, I've got a question for you. You launched Menyou last year. Right. Was that one of your goals for last year?
I would say yes, definitely, most definitely. I think it was a goal for actually one thing is you have to realize setting a goal is one thing and achieving is another thing. But achieving it really puts you ownership of a lot of things. I mean, one thing I learned from that itself, the launch itself, is that I tend to take ownership of a lot of things. And one thing I don't realize is that sometimes you want to sort of put your effort into what's worth the most and not waste the time that someone else can do, for example. And what I really learned from that is from the last year, specifically with the launch of the Menyou itself, you almost want to sort of outsource some of the work that you don't necessarily have to do yourself all the time. Because one thing is I'm really bad at doing is micromanaging. Like it's really, it's good in the beginning of your business in terms of starting up. It's great skill to have, but as business starts to pick up, you sort of have to sort of walk away from that micromanagement, because as soon as you sort of, you want to sort of assign someone a task, for example, you don't want to attach a detailed project plan as well. Someone else should be responsible for that. That's one thing I learned to realize. I'd rather assign a task to someone instead of having to give a detailed plan along with it as well, right? So for sure, last year, going back to the question, I think one of my goals was to launch it, and we did attain that goal, which was great. But that wasn't done just by overnight, obviously.
Obviously,
It took a lot of effort.
Start on January 1st and say, I'm going to launch a software business this year.
That's right. But we, quite honestly, we worked over a year and a half. I was telling Siva, just to get to that stage. There's a lot of research and development that needs to be done. I'm one of those person, I don't like to talk about it unless we've done it, right? Yeah. But that kind of could backfire you in some ways, because I learned that as well. Like, sometimes you do want to talk about it because again, going back to my earlier point, it gives you that accountability of meeting that goal. Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. As soon as you tell someone, they'll come back to you next time they see you, is, hey, how's that project going? I'm like, ooh, not so well. You feel guilty. It's good to feel guilty, because that makes you realize, hey, look, there's something that I said I'll do. I didn't even get to that stage. Okay. So that really makes a big difference, I think, in my point of view. And now I tend to talk about it with my close friends. They can also become your support system too. It really helps to sort of understand, hey, like, let me help you if you wanted to get to where you want to go.
Or to keep kind of revving your...
Exactly.
So let me then ask you, we asked Philip this question, and that is the number. 75% of people are breaking their resolutions. Sometimes the average apparently is 20 days. Why is this happening? Q, I'm going to start with you. Why do you think this is happening? Why are people making... And if you hear some of these resolutions, they're all good. Nothing in here is saying, I'm going to be a celebrity by June. Nothing here is completely impossible. Do you know what I mean? So why is it?
I really think that just life gets in the way. You have so many responsibilities. So the older you get, you have more responsibility. You have no time. Mainly, it's time management. A lot of people don't know how to time manage, so that's what happens. And then you just, you don't have time to go to the gym. You get tired and all that kind of stuff. Things get in the way, and then you start making excuses for yourself as well. Oh, maybe I'll go tomorrow. Maybe I'll go tomorrow. You procrastinate, and then eventually you just like, okay, I haven't done it in 3 weeks. What's the point? And you kind of just give up.
Siva?
I think procrastination and time management absolutely are two biggest reasons why we lose track of something like this. And of course, we can fight it with accountability. I've read somewhere where if you tell your friend that you're going to go to the gym, it's one thing. But then if you tell your friend and give him $500 and say, you can keep this if I don't go to the gym, that's completely another thing.
Commitment.
It's
Oh,
now
that's interesting.
it's now a commitment that if you break, you're going to lose money. They say, you can pay for your gym membership, $400 or $500 a year, but then even if you leave something like a book that you're reading or something like that at the gym, and then you can only have access to it at the gym, that $5 book will take you to the gym because that motivation was there, as opposed to you're like, I don't want to wake up today.
The fact that you've paid, I think, a membership fee, I don't think that's really...
It doesn't matter because you don't even see it anymore.
It's
right?
done. It's already paid.
It's already
gone.
done.
Yeah.
But knowing that you might lose $500 by not going there, I think that's my tip to anybody who wants to set a goal and stick to it, is to get someone who's at a mentorship level to you, or at least your friend who would keep their word by taking your money if you do screw up.
And that's where punishment comes along, right?
Exactly, right? I'm willing to do that for either of you guys. Take your money.
It's willing to be a punishment. You give and you give, Siva.
That's right.
Don't invest
Always.
that money, I tell you that.
So,
But-
Thaves, what about for you? Why do you think? I mean, you know a couple of other business people too. I mean,
I think
why
it's-
do people break their New Year resolutions?
I
And it's
think-
not just young and old. There are people in the corporate community that do too.
Sure. I think it's overcommitment, and being unrealistic is a big component to it. What I mean by that is, for example, you want to be financially well, for example, or you want to get a raise, for example. That really doesn't involve just yourself. There's other factors that are involved with that. So you almost have to learn from it. And having overcommitment to certain things that doesn't really have your impact at all times can really not make you meet that goal, because it may be the financial situation of the company that may not be committed to giving that raise or whatnot, right? That really becomes an unrealistic goal, in my opinion, because it's not just you that are involved, it's other parties that are involved within what you're trying to accomplish. So losing your weight, that's a different story. That you obviously are responsible for it when you don't meet that. But also even that itself, if you don't say, okay, every week I'm gonna lose 1 pound. That itself, after a week, oh crap, I just, next week I have to now lose 2 pounds. And then you don't want to look back and say, after 52 weeks, I still have another 52 pounds to lose next week. So that itself.
So it's the idea of
specific.
like you said, tasks, smaller goals, smaller endpoints.
Yeah. And being able to stay within your territory, right? And more importantly, being able to reach out to what you can do and what you cannot do. That makes
Now,
a big
you
difference.
talked about accountability.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's something important to you because you feel when you make goals, you have to be accountable to yourself, but it seems like you also count on other people to keep you accountable.
Yes, most definitely. I think it becomes a component to your life because it's not always you. It's when you, especially in a business scenario, like a startup, for example. Unfortunately, you have to depend on a lot of other people for them to make that commitment that they promised to do, and that may mean that you need to bug them every single day, every single week, or just to get their things rolling, because they may have a different priority. Because prioritizing is another big component too. So yes, I do agree that there's other people that are involved, but at the end of the day, it's you're the driver, because you're the one that set that goal. So you have to be on top of it and to ensure that person is sort of getting back to what you're supposed to get, basically, right?
So I'm going to come back to you because I will be asking you what one of your goals are,
Sure.
because I'd love to hear. But I wanted to ask you another question, Siva. I know that a couple of you've spoken publicly about this. I believe that you've fought cancer, if I'm correct, previously. How does that sort of change how you approach setting goals for the year in terms of taking care of yourself and things like that?
It does definitely change your perspective, that's for one. It takes you back to what's really important in life. Family, your health, and the things that really matter to you. So now when I think about goals, my first and utmost, the first goal in my life is happiness, bliss, health.
Did it change after the cancer? you think?
Absolutely, yeah,
Really?
absolutely.
What
It
was
changed.
it prior to that? you
Oh
think?
yeah, just like everybody else, chase some money,
Okay.
do this, do that, and whatnot. And after cancer is what gave me the strength to quit a well-paying job and do something else that was risky, and take on many other things that I wouldn't have taken on prior to that. It helped me see what is really important and yes, it was an unfortunate incident, but seeing the benefits of it made me recognize that there are, even in the darkest corners of your life, you can always find an out. You can always find something that is great about it. So it changed my views, and it also changed my perception of, okay, what is most important to me tomorrow? If I have to go clean slate, what's one thing that I must achieve? And so that list is now set in stone. So you could call it New Year goal, but it's your life goal. So it helped me find a life goal. I think everyone needs something like that, that they can always look back to and feel good about it. They could say, okay, even if I don't do anything today, have I somehow contributed to my life goal?
That's actually an interesting way to approach it, because then you could have that 50 or 25 or whatever.
However long you want. And the thing is, nowadays, going back to the original question, why do people break their New Year's commitments? They don't get time to self-reflect nowadays. What ends up happening is you are now looking out, searching for validation outside. You're putting your stuff on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and when people like and click that heart button, it makes your heart warm, and you're like, oh yes, I feel so good about it now. But you forget that's not the way you live, and that's not how we were programmed to live. So you forget how to be alone. You forget how to feel for your own self and make goals for yourself, and make them be valid for you first. Because if they don't validate you or have any meaning to you, then you never achieve them. They're just for somebody else. So that was a big learning for me.
That was a big, and sometimes it takes that kind of an episode in your life before you can make that kind of a change. Now, Thaves, I know that I'm not going to get you to share any of your business goals for a startup. My assumption is that a lot of that is or your competitors may be listening, and who knows. So if you have competitors, that is. But I'm just curious, how do you go about setting your goals? Do you do them annually? Like, walk us through that process in 4 minutes, hopefully less.
You know what? I think for me, it goes back to the roots, which is writing down things, what you want to get accomplished. Not necessarily by end of the year, just, maybe every quarter, every month or whatnot. And then what I really learned is put a deadline. Like, you have to put a deadline in every single task you put down on a piece of paper, because that's what really counts the most, I think, in my opinion, because it becomes really a way to reflect on it when that day comes. Like, I used to be a big component sort of to email myself a lot of times. I swear, that's how I set my daily reminders, emailing myself. And because I have a conscious checking my email every day. That's just part of our lifestyle, obviously, right? And so that's how I remind myself, hey, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this by the end of the day. That's just, and obviously now there's much better tools out there to manage my time, but I still tend to do that just because I'm so used to it. But I think it boils down to sort of, you want to be realistic, and you don't want to set up yourself for failures. And what I mean by that is there's certain things that you want to put down, and you have to ask yourself the question, okay, is this attainable? Is this even close to being attainable? Or what is my backup plan if not, right? Because you got to admit it. I mean, nothing works the way you want it to be. If it does, I mean, we wouldn't be doing the show, obviously, I guess. but at the end of the day, you really look at and see what is sort of attainable and make a realistic goal. And don't set yourself for failure. That's one thing we learned from the past. And because certain things, we don't look ahead and put ourselves in a situation, okay, wait, if we do this is really going to get us what we wanted. Because let's say, launching a business at a specific location, it makes a difference what the demographic of that location is, like, how many people are coming on a daily basis. Because that really puts your product in front of so many different people. Is that what you want, right? And so that really sort of speaks volume in terms of not setting yourself up for failure, which obviously gives that motivation when you meet that goal, right?
Yeah.
To go after the next goal. Because the last thing you want to do is just keep failing and failing and failing, and like you just give up.
It's just built in then. It becomes like a psychology.
Exactly. So you almost and honestly, like, failure does lead to success, right? Sometimes, but you have to take that from the good side of it as well.
So I think we will have to go to a break soon, but we'll come back to that. But I do want to talk, we've talked about accountability, commitments, timelines. I do want to talk about incentives, because it is something that I completely believe in. Stay with us. You guys stay here too. Do not move. We're going to be back after the break. You're watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI. We're speaking about setting New Year resolutions or breaking them. In our studio, we have Thaves Ponnampalam, Kiru Srikanth, and Siva Heron. So I'm going to start off with you, Kiru. I think enough people here have mentioned the idea of reflection. First of all, what is reflection?
Setting a goal for yourself and seeing if you actually did accomplish it. How much of it did you accomplish? And is it good for you? Is it not good for you? Are you going to proceed with it?
So just kind of looking back and seeing how things have gone. Mm-hmm. So let's look back at your last year. I mean, you have you're trying to be a child therapist. You have so many things on the go, and mm-hmm. I see you at many things in the community. I mean, what was a highlight for you in 2013?
Absolutely, my video blogs. It gives me so much pleasure doing them, and it's a self-satisfaction knowing that because I actually get a lot of people messaging me and saying, "Oh, thank you so much for these videos. They really helped me through things." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I'm surprised that they actually helped someone, and that's amazing. That was my goal, and I actually reached it at least for a couple of people. So it's great." And one of my greatest accomplishments, well, it's not really an accomplishment, just something that I take pride in. One of my videos, the singer Chime actually messaged it, and she's like, "Oh, this is really good," and everything. And when I messaged her back, and she's getting married soon, and she's like, "Don't worry, my wedding's gonna," because the video was about Tamil weddings and how people just spend way too much on them, and so she was like, "Don't worry, my wedding's gonna be really, just cultural, very nice." And I'm like, "Wow, you actually remembered my video, and you're actually
explaining." To
yeah,
me.
And I was surprised. I'm like, that's amazing. So that's definitely one of my greatest. So
what are the topics? Do we have some topics coming up?
Right now I'm working on a video, just like something very just entertaining about what kids say. So that's what I'm working on right now. But in the past, I've done things about Tamil weddings, school, how to make friends in school, because it's really hard when people go back to school, exam time, just random things.
Where's the blog? How do people find it if they go to YouTube?
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, type in Kiru's Corner, and make sure you put an apostrophe before the S, because it takes you to a whole other page if you don't do that.
Some other Kiru.
Yeah, some other Kiru's getting my subscribers.
We'll have a talk with that Kiru. So let's go to you. What was, you do a tremendous amount of things. What was the thing in 2013?
Well, beginning of 2013, I was in India, and I got married to my soulmate. So I think that was, for me, it was a milestone because it had a lot of spiritual things behind it and things like that. But from it came another project that I'm working on, which is to go back to India. I don't want to share too much about it, but and that has been a big highlight for me. And of course, this was my first year going full time in photography, even though I've been out there for a while. I stopped going back to work as of June of 2012, and so 2013 was my first full year.
Congratulations.
And so that was a big step forward, and to do it with a lot of international recognition and seeing hard work pay off was very, very endearing to my heart. But at the same time, it's pushing me forward and makes me want to do more. I find during this, what I call my slow season or business reflective season.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, what it does is it lets you go back and see what you've done before, and every time I do that, I'm like, oh my God, I suck. And so, as a creative professional, I think that's a process. Mm-hmm. We all go through it. We look back at what we did yesterday or a year before, and then you're like, okay, this is not good enough.
Yeah.
Let's do more. Let's figure out what else to do. And so, I have so many new things that I'm looking forward to. So 2014 and 15, 16, whatever it comes.
Killer years.
Yeah. So,
Thaves, what about you? What was a highlight for you in 2013?
I think one of the main highlights is me walking away from the corporate world. I think that really changed my whole lifestyle in terms of walking into the entrepreneurship world. And I think especially it's shocked the hell out of my parents in so many ways. Looking back, I'm realizing what the reactions were there in my parents' eyes. They thought I was somewhat crazy, but it did prove a big point in my life, and I'm grateful for it. It's great working for a company. I don't regret any days I spent there. But at one point of your life, you realize you're really helping someone else build their dreams instead of building your own dreams. So that's what, it just took me to the next level. going into this unpredictable entrepreneurship world, which I'm grateful for. Actually, now I think back about it, I don't think I would take back anything I've done. So
good.
It's
well,
really,
I hope it's going to be an even better year this year. Well,
really
thank you guys. I mean, you guys have been fantastic. I think that I'm just going to share like a story of mine. I totally believe in incentives. I think what are incentives that you use to keep yourself motivated?
Eating ice cream.
Eating ice cream.
Eating ice cream. What's an incentive for you?
I would say just taking a day off that we don't have to concentrate on, put the phone away, put the emails away, and just relax.
And do what you want.
What you want.
Incentive.
Travel.
Travel?
I think
Okay.
travel is, I kind of set a bonus point system, and then if I have enough, I get to travel.
Okay.
So
That's really nice. Well, I completely believe in incentives. I also wanted to share something else that I do. I believe what Philip says about reflection too is that I actually write a little journal every day. I actually have to give myself an incentive to write a journal every day because you don't have time. But I noticed one thing. My degree of happiness has gone up since I started, because what I'm supposed to write is 3 things I could improve and 3 things I loved about today. And for some reason, but I look back at when I started it, and so if anyone is out there listening, I would completely recommend this. It takes like 5 seconds, and there's software applications. You can do it right on any device that you have now. But I do have to say, one funny thing about incentives is that I started meditating a couple of years ago, and I had incentives to do that. So if I could meditate so many days in a row, I could buy myself an outfit. I remember at one point my husband's like, "We can't afford your meditation." And I thought, it is really wrong to reward yourself with like spending money on meditating, like something, I'm sure some yogi in India just thinks that's completely insulting. But anyway.
But spending money, that's retail therapy too.
It's retail therapy.
Only company loves you, probably.
I know. But anyway, so it's just something to be said for that. So thank you so much. I hope to have you guys again. Have a fantastic year, and thanks for all the tips that you shared. I also wanted to share some final thoughts for the day. The last few weeks have been a trying time for the gay and lesbian community worldwide, or we should say more troubling than usual. On December 11th, the Indian Supreme Court upheld a law that criminalizes homosexuality. Later in December, Uganda went from making homosexuality illegal to passing a law that allows for homosexuality to be punished with a maximum penalty, this is crazy, of life imprisonment. Though our environment may not be perfect here when it comes to equality, it is deplorable to see these countries make such laws and decisions. Sometime this year, we look forward to having a panel join us to discuss why things are taking a turn for the worse in these countries. Until then, thank you all for joining us. Have a fabulous year. You've been watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja.